What is up, YouTube? And today we're going to be ranking all of the collab units in light of the recent collab that just came out, Overlord with Epic 7. And you can see here with this tier list, we're going to be ranking these units in 5 tiers. We have the meta tier. These units will be very good for PvP currently. We have the decent tier. These units are still good, but just not as universally used as the meta units. We have the niche tier. These units are okay, but you can only pick them in certain situations. The PvE tier, this is going to be for units that are exclusively only for PvE. And then we also have the needs a buff tier. These units are just bad and honestly just need a buff to actually be playable. So we're just going to start with the first unit at the top right here, Baiken, and we'll just go left to right as they come up. So Baiken is a PvE only unit, and honestly she's only really used for like Banshee, especially Banshee one-shot teams, because she's so easy to build. She still is, after I don't even know how long she's been out, like 4 years, 5 years, one of the best, if not the best, Banshee one-shotter in the game, because she's very easy to build. You can literally put her on your free level 75 attack set you get at the beginning of creating your account, and she should work on it. And she's also decent in Ice Expedition, so she's good there as well. But mostly you're going to see her in Banshee one-shot, and she's pretty strong there. Next we have Albedo. Honestly, I kind of want to put her either in niche or decent. I don't think she's as bad. I think I'm going to put her in niche. She's mostly an anti-cleave unit currently, and even then, there's kind of better units. I don't think she definitely needs somewhat of a buff, but honestly, I think she's not as bad as people think. I still think she has a niche. She just isn't as strong comparatively to the other collab units, but there's going to be way worse units that honestly need a buff. Next, we have Ainz. So I think Ainz is actually bad, mostly because he just dies to light units. He's very gimmicky. He really relies on RNG in his S1. And he also gets screwed over by RNG because his S3 doesn't have ignore effect resist. He is a free-to-play unit, so he should be weaker than the other ones technically, but he's the main character of the series, so I don't know why he's so weak. He also has a passive where he takes more damage from light units, which are, running around in the meta crazily, so pretty bad unit. He is super hard to build, and he just gets screwed over by RNG a lot, so I'm going to put him in needs a buff. Hopefully Smiling It buffs him, and honestly Albedo too, because they feel a little bit underwhelming. Next we have Benimaru, another niche unit. Honestly, you only use him in Guild Wars offense against like Conquerors and stuff like that. But even then, you might as well just bring like Moon Bunny Dominion, and she's just better. So also kind of like in the needs a buff tier. I think he is niche. He's good against extra turn users, but there's just better options. So I think he needs a buff to actually be relevant, because of the fact that, he just kind of gets replaced by Moon Bunny Dominion in a lot of situations. Next up, we have Dizzy, also from Guilty Gear, also a PvE unit, very good in Abyss. She's kind of like a CC unit for PvP, but, debuffs get countered pretty heavily, so pretty hard to use her. She gets screwed over by immunity buffs. She definitely needs a buff for PvP. She needs like a strip on her S3 or something, but without that, she's mostly going to be just an Abyss unit, but she's very good in the early levels of Abyss. Next, we have Edward Elric. He's either meta or decent. I think I'm going to actually put him in the decent tier. Actually, I'll put him in meta because he's very good against debuffs, obviously. He does have a lot of counters, but he's still pretty good. You can put him on a variety of sets: lifesteal set, destruction set, speed set, injury set, right? Very strong against debuff heavy units, also a very good fire damage dealer. And there's not a lot of good fire damage dealers in the game at all, so he definitely fits the meta criteria, I'd say. Definitely a powerful unit. A lot of damage, very bulky, and super annoying with his S2 Batback that also, applies random debuffs. Next we have Elfelt, mostly a PvE unit as well. All the Guilty Gear units you're going to see are all PvE besides one of them, and she's very good for Katie's one-shot. She's good for some other one-shots, and she's also good in Raid as well. And next we have Amelia. So Amelia, I'd say she's a decent unit, maybe niche actually, just because of the fact that, I'll put her in decent, just because of the fact that she can push up units. Very good for Guild Wars offense still. She's kind of like I wouldn't say worse version of a mid, but she's better at buffing, one unit and also having better healing capabilities, right? I think a mid is slightly better though, so because of that, Amelia has definitely fallen out of flavor, but she's still very good with like the buffed Widow Queen Charlotte and also like Strays, so for that reason, we're going to put her in the decent tier. Next, we have Jacko. Jacko is decent as well. Honestly, probably meta if you're a cleaver, right? Very strong cleave unit, very powerful, but I'm going to put her in decent just because she only fits in one playstyle, which is cleave and aggression, but she's very good there. She abuses debuffs very well. She can one-shot a ton of units, very strong. Milim, I'm going to put her in niche, very good against stealth users because you can knock them out of stealth. I actually kind of messed around with a Bruiser Milim against ML Politis, and she seems okay because she can remove the stealth and kind of one-shot her. It's a pretty decent unit. Just that she is very stat hungry and she is kind of squishy because she's a mage. So because of that, it is hard to build her, but if you build her well, she's pretty strong and I think an underrated fire bruiser. Next up, we have Ram. So Ram is PvE as well, just a free unit from ReZero Collab. Very good for Ice Expedition, also good for Hunt One Shot. Pretty similar to Baiken in terms of how she's used. Honestly, they're pretty much the same unit. I'd say they fill the same role, same function, so you can't go wrong with either of these units for your Ice Expedition or Banshee team. They're very, very good there, but they're interchangeable in my opinion. Next we have Ram. So Ram actually probably needs a buff, but I'm going to put her in niche just because she's so good against cleave. The only thing is there's a lot of ways to stop counterattacks now, like Noggle and stuff like that. You can even CC her, right? Even though she breaks out of CC when someone dies. So because of that, she's in the niche tier. I think she definitely still needs a buff probably, but she is technically usable against cleave and she's actually not that bad. Rimuru, definitely a meta unit right now. Very good against Midnight Gala Lilius. Also good against Karina, who's very strong. So because of that, I'm going to put him in the meta tier. Probably better than Edward Elric right now because he's so good. Also, he's pretty decent in 2-shell tier as well. If you can break her out of stealth, Rimuru just one-shots her. Next, we have Riza Hawkeye. Honestly, I have no idea what she does because she's so bad. On release, people are like, oh, she'll be good for Wyvern, but she sucks there too. She sucks in PvP. Just a terrible unit. I think she definitely needs a buff. I have no clue what she does. I think it's something with like this unique buff to like the front unit or something, or back unit, and it's just terrible. So because of that, definitely needs a buff. Roy Mustang, very decent unit. I wouldn't say he's like super meta defining because there's ways to counter him, especially with like Ikarina and stuff like that, and also just like unbuffable. Really screws him over with his artifact that relies on Chatty for tankiness, but very strong damage dealer. Weak against ice units though. There's pretty good ice units already in the game, so you have to keep that in mind. But he does a ton of damage. He can one-shot a ton of units, so because of that, definitely a top tier damage dealer. Next up we have Shaltir. Honestly, it's a bit too early to actually rank her. I'm gonna put her in the meta tier just because I've been having a lot of success with her. Very good against Aidens, very good against health stacking users such as like Laya, and she's very tanky. So because of that, I'll put her in the meta tier. Honestly, she's kind of like a worse version of Janua. Obviously, they're kind of different, but in terms of just raw fire damage, you kind of want Janua over Shaltir, but still a pretty solid unit. I think she's pretty strong. Honestly, she's probably somewhere around here. So I'll probably stick her in decent, but I wouldn't be surprised if after more testing she shoots up and ends up being very strong. Shuna, niche unit. She used to be pretty decent after her buffs, but kind of got power crept pretty quickly just because there's a lot of good cleansers in the game, and her speed tier isn't the best. So because of that, we have her in the niche tier. She's kind of like a little bit worse version of Meteor Calric, although more aggressive. Kind of hard to explain, but she has really good cleansing. She has a sleep buff, which is very annoying, which makes her very strong. It's just that she gets outsped, she gets completely destroyed by cleave, and if she doesn't really, get her turn off against teams without immunity, then she is pretty meh because her healing is not that great, and her skill cooldowns are very, very long. Next up, we have Soul, mostly PvE unit. Pretty much all of the Guilty Gear units except Jacko are PvE. He's very good for Golem and also Earth Expo, but that is pretty much it. Giselle, I think she's pretty underrated. She's pretty good in raid because she has a self-cleanse. She's kind of like a hawk in a way, but you want to build her more heavily in damage and have someone, buff her up. I'm going to put her in the niche tier. She's pretty decent with like an Amelia type of unit or like a mid, and she's pretty good in single target aggression cleave. Mostly going to be used in Guild Wars offense though, not really RTA, although you can pick her there. But she's good in Guild Wars offense, and also you can use her in raid. Ikarina, probably the best collab unit we've ever had, just because her kit is super good against cleave. It's also very good against squishy units, and her artifact makes her beyond strong. She can one-shot squishy units. She can do a ton of damage to tanks if you land a defense break. And she has this S2, which gives her defense buff, which makes her S3 splash damage literally do a total of like 30k damage sometimes, which is insane. So because of that, we have her in the meta tier. Best unit from the collabs, in my opinion, so far. Ning Ning definitely needs a buff. She's like a barrier inversion unit, but honestly, there's just a lot better barrier inversion units. You might as well use DJ Pasar, ML Pasar. He's just way better version of Ning Ning. Or even if you want to play more aggressive, like Arunka in RGB 5-stars. So because of that, we're going to put her in the needs a buff tier. I don't know how they should buff her, but she seems pretty weak from what I've seen. Winter, also probably needs a buff, but I'm going to put her in niche just because I still see her in some Guild Wars defenses. She's pretty much only used in Guild Wars defense to cheese. She's also pretty good in raid against the spider boss because you can do fixed damage, so she's pretty good there. But outside of Guild Wars defense and raid, you don't really use her. So I'm gonna put her in niche because she is technically still playable against teams with non-attack skills, so you can refresh your S3 cooldown and build a very tanky and kind of like stun locked units. But yeah, that's pretty much the collab unit tier list. If you guys have any opinions about units being need to place higher or lower, let me know in the comments down below, and I'll see you guys next video.